Good morning, everyone. Hello. I do apologise that I didn't advertise this live. I've had a very busy week indeed. I'll talk a little bit more about the week. Just first of all, I wish to acknowledge the land of the Jar Jar Wrong, where Bendigo, Victoria is situated, and acknowledge the elders and pay my respects to the elders past and present, and acknowledge as well that their struggle, the struggle of the first people, is our struggle, part of the big struggle against imperialism, capitalism, black and white, unite and fight. And imperialism, the struggle against it is the highest form of class struggle. Well, it has been a busy week indeed. I don't know, it's been non-stop. It seems to get everything gets a lot more busy before Christmas, instead of everything trying to wind down. And yeah, there's obviously issues on the jobs as well. Obviously trying to finish off some negotiations, and all the other nuts and bolts, but seemed everything escalate. I mean, even one Christmas there, just before we broke up for the year, 5 minutes before, I get a call that once they didn't get paid for this and that, and they wanted to dispute something. And it's like, well, what could we do just before Christmas when the whole place is going to be shut down for 2 weeks? But this is what happens. A lot of employers out there like to escalate things before Christmas. I think they know the timing is good for them to do so, and obviously knowing full well that a lot of people are going to be off over the Christmas New Year break, and nothing can really be done until New Year. But I'm going to be looking forward to this year is over. I'm going to be having all the January off and then a break. I've been working right through. I know a lot of people have either lost their jobs or have had to work from home, stayed at home during the whole COVID-19, but not me. We had to, as many of us, especially in regional Victoria, are still on the road, flying the flag, and out there addressing the members and trying to also map new places as well. So it has been a tough year, and we've had a few negotiations, which actually took a lot of time as well. I found out why I get this cough. It's a lot of dust in the air. There's a mixture of pollens and wheat dust and anything that's quite a dusty atmosphere. Even smoke does irritate my chest. It's but I was actually noticing when I was driving back from Mildura the other day where they're harvesting all these paddocks because we've got a bumper wheat crop this year, and I've never seen wheat fields so thick wheat in my life. But you can just see the haze of wheat dust everywhere, and certainly you can play a little bit of havoc on the chest. So anyway, enough of the health issue side of things. Well, actually, this week, obviously, there was a big announcement for industrial relations reform by our Federal Minister for Industrial Relations, Christian Porter, and some of those proposals in the bills. One was actually to allow for pay cuts, allow for employers the ability to reduce pay conditions further. Even though they said temporarily, good news is they backed down on it for the moment. The media said it was cremated, dead, buried, or dead and cremated. But no, it was. Well, if it was dead and cremated, well, it obviously wouldn't be reappearing. The policies wouldn't still be appearing on the scene, would they now? So that's where. That was one particular issue, but another big issue we have to look at too is the breaking up of unions. What that basically is, any amalgamation can be opposed by the government, but also allows the ability for unions to basically disamalgamate and break up themselves. It's actually called the Union Divorce Law. I think it's a dreadful bit of legislation. It's certainly at this time when workers are under attack. The last thing we want is unions broken up into small little unions further. We need to be united and stronger together. It's definitely targeting one union, CFMMEU, and obviously they've been a powerful union for such time, with a long history of struggle, along with the union. I'm involved in the AMWU as well. It gives the employers the ability to influence unions to break them up. It also allows that one section, if one division or one part of it to break away as well, which is, as I said, that'll just cause the workers to be divided even more. We need unity, maximum unity now, because these attacks are quite dreadful. The other one is about also casualisation. Well, we've got a casualised workforce, a lot of it is, but the definition of a casual will be changed. This will allow the ability for employers to have long-term casuals again, and not allow unions then to pursue claims that for annual leave, sick pay, and other entitlements that are fully awarded to full-time employees. That's also a big concern as well. And obviously there's wage theft law, which might sound good, but the devil's in the detail. That will stop the ability for employers from not paying out entitlements or paying the correct pay. However, let's just keep that in devil in the detail. May be a good thing, may not be. So there could be a lot of complications around that as well. Certainly it's a big issue for us here in Australia for such time. There is another piece of legislation as well. That's right, is the award simplification process. They want to allow the ability for awards to be simplified a lot easier. That means, AKA, let's gut the awards completely or destroy them completely. And unfortunately, now we've noticed a lot of conditions that had been enjoyed. There's been a lot of interpretations of certain conditions we have, and then where we are now, you no longer get it, or it's been interpreted differently, and that is a very big concern. So that just gives you an example. It was tabled in Parliament this week. Obviously, it won't be voted on, but the timing of it was to do it just before Christmas, the Christmas breakup, and what they will do now is allow the ability then to start lobbying to try and get this passed into Parliament when Parliament resumes next year. The next actually I want to talk about is China relations, and obviously it's just going from a bad, worse situation. It's not, and obviously the diplomatic row has spilled over into a trade row as well. Obviously looking to put more. China's looking to put more tariffs on our goods or stop any of their goods coming into their country, and obviously our Prime Minister. Having orders from Washington to keep up the rhetoric against China, the anti-China rhetoric. What's in the eye? And what we're seeing playing out here in the field, though, is that capitalism in this country is in a dead end now. It can no longer expand. China now is the global economic now. Well, certainly its economy is a lot bigger now than the US, so it's beaten the US. We're all tied up into that. What we're seeing now is the rapid expansion of China's economic power with the One Belt, One Road initiative, and then further a lot of companies joining onto that One Belt, One Road initiative. Thing is, the Western capitalists, especially the ones in Wall Street in London, don't want that to happen. We're on the front footing here, and obviously capitalism in this country. They can no longer expand. It certainly has gone into that dead end scenario. So what we're seeing here is the systematic crisis of capitalism here, and what's happening when everything goes out of beam? It goes on the attack. So that's what we're seeing now. The Prime Minister is playing this out. It's the trade relations and bilateral relations and that are not getting any better at the moment. And the fact is, the people who suffer the most is the working class people of this country. I know we've lost a lot of jobs here in this country over the last 40 years. A lot of workers have been forgotten about, communities have been forgotten about, and now basically all they want to do is put us on a war footing or on some sort of footing that'll actually put all those disenfranchised working class people into a worse situation. There's nothing talking about rebuilding a new Australia, nothing about that at all. All it is just basic lip service about renewable energy, how we'll go into this gas-led economy. But the fact is, at the end of the day, the only people who will be benefiting will be the capitalist class. It will not be the Australian working class at all. And going on a war footing or on some sort of aggressive diplomacy with other countries is just going to make matters worse. Instead, once again, what and it should be pointed out that if we had a government of action that fights for working families, they'd be actually mobilising the population about building a new Australia and about building our own industries. That's what it would be all about. And to start addressing the problems of drug addiction, poverty, any type of affliction that's in our society. And that way we can actually increase our productive forces, and everything based around a centrally organised plan. And production is put into use for the benefit of the majority, not of the minority, where profits are no longer in command. We can actually get wealthy without capitalism, but we need a government of action that fights for working families here in Australia as well, and one that's got vision and one that's got strength as well, not weakness. And which actually this will also flow into about the vaccines, the situation here in Australia. We won't be receiving any vaccines until about March. Mind you, we got the COVID-19 under control here, next to 0 cases. There has been 5 new cases reported in Victoria, but that's only to do with hotel quarantine for those who are returning home from overseas. They've obviously had to quarantine, they've been tested positive, so they don't have to sit that time out. But unfortunately, amongst the rest of the population, still 0 cases. However, what we're also seeing here is capitalist monopolisation of our vaccines. Now, Pfizer, and I forget the other name of the other major pharmaceutical company that's producing these vaccines, are not wanting us to buy any of the Russian, Chinese, Cuban vaccines at all. In fact, what we're seeing in the media is a whole demonisation of those vaccines. It's because Pfizer wants to monopolise the whole pharmaceutical scheme for the vaccine. So they've got the dominance of the market. And obviously we've seen during the week, even Donald Trump can't take on Pfizer because he's weak and refuses to do so. He could have given an executive order to demand, no, we need the vaccines for our population now. The US is in crisis. And even here, what we're seeing is CSL, the Commonwealth Serum Laboratory, which was trying to produce a vaccine. There was apparently what happened. There was a test that came back negative. So what do? Just completely stop the program. Why? Because Pfizer and any other type of capitalist enterprise does not want us even to produce our own vaccines anymore. Now, I'm not going to get into vaccinations are good or bad. That's not the discussion. What we're talking about here is the capitalist control of these vaccines and using a crisis like this to further monopolise and to make a greater profit instead of actually putting people's health first. If we had a government of action that fights for working families, they would have put the people's health first. They would have ordered immediately fast-track these vaccines up to a higher order to make sure the population's looked after, instead of using those who only want to make a profit out of this, allow us to be used in such a way that our health does not matter. And we saw this right through the whole virus. It was more or less get everything back to work, get this economy going, never mind about people's health. And once again, I'll say this, during this whole lockdown period when we had this, and the states had a lockdown, especially the state of Victoria, the federal government, all they did was go on the attack. Anything good, they went on and attacked it. And that's all they did. They actually did very little to look after my population here. Though we would have been prepared to just have open border, they would have had prepared to let this virus go feral. That just shows you how the situation could have been if there was no action on this at all. We could have wound up being like Sweden, it could have been like the US, it could have been like any other European country, Britain included. So that's what we're seeing here on the scene at the moment. Companies like multinationals like Pfizer do not want you to buy all those other vaccines. They want you to buy their one and that alone. And it was interesting how they were saying that the vaccines developed in China and Russia haven't been properly tested. Well, what's to say that Pfizer hasn't been properly tested? It's just a typical and of a capitalist. Of course, the reason why they don't want you to buy it, they want you to buy theirs. They'll obviously want to say their product is better than theirs. That's what we're seeing here. about, instead of being genuine about it, we would have said, look, Pfizer said we can't produce enough. Fine, we need to, and if we couldn't produce enough, fine, then we need to have extra vaccines developed in. But no, this is what we're seeing. But economics, the political economy is being played out on our health even further. So that's what we're seeing during the week, and what we're seeing developing here in Australia. The other thing we're also seeing with the whole, from all this, when I'm going back with about the China relations, is also too our diminishing market than the capitalists. Eventually, China will look to other markets elsewhere, and other countries for their products, and we're going to be completely cut off. And once again, who will suffer? Working class people. And unfortunately, that's where it is at the moment. And of course, the way the current state of affairs is at the moment, none of the major party will be generally concerned about fighting for working families. In fact, what they will do, they will stick down to the neoliberal free trade agenda, open borders, and allow and just allow the free flow of goods. Leave it up to the private profit motive instead of taking action and in control of the situation and say we need to build a new Australia. And the vaccine side of things has just clearly showed this as well. It has been a horror. It has been a big week, and a week's a long time in politics, as they say. And I think, well, look, I think where we're heading at the moment is not really good. As I said, the upside of things is we're pretty much been very fortunate now with COVID-19. So far, so good. But I'm happy to be proven wrong. But look, I think we've done remarkably quite well, considering under the circumstances that we've had to operate under. So that's where we're at in regards to COVID-19. But also what was interesting this week as well, was actually the last 2 weeks, India, the biggest strike in history, in world history, not just Indian history, but world history. Over 250 million workers and farmers together, united, organised by the Communist Party of India, Marxist, and also to agree to the Communist Party of India, and I believe there was the Socialist Unity Centre of India, I think that's what they call themselves, have been central into organising that. And that has been a huge, huge effort by those three organisations to organise that. And it shows too, the Indian government, the Modi government, is under a lot of pressure now. And it shows you the crisis of capitalism in India is actually a lot worse. So we do need to actually see how events play out. The farmers and workers are very well organised. It's ambitious. There's a lot of unity there. I believe actually the World Federation of Trade Unions has been heavily involved, organising international support. It is certainly a very, very interesting state of affairs over there, and certainly inspirational as well. We can learn a lot from that. And Caleb Maupin very quickly pointed something out. It wasn't organised around any secondary issue. It was organised around what was primary. And he kept focused on that. We weren't distracted by, say, gender, colour of skin, race, nationality, etc. They're all united on one thing: class. And that's certainly that needs to be pointed out for us here. We cannot afford to be caught off on what's secondary. I mean, there might be important issues, but we need to actually be organised on what's primary. We're working class, and we need to be organised as such that way. Certainly, very big inspirational. And the media here has been trying to play it down. There was some lip service by the ABC, the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. It used to be known as the Commission, Australian Broadcasting Commission, now Corporation. And it's a very liberal type media. Liberal, I mean, in the sense that we're not Liberal Party or Conservative. It's just, liberal in the term where it's the liberal arm of imperialism, and they actually played it down. They actually came out and said 250,000 were on strike. They got that wrong, 250 million. And they tried to not really, and they did, I could see it, they were really trying to just gloss over it, not getting down to the root cause of the problem and the actual cause why they're out. And I always question now the media which is understandable. How they actually give about their news sources and how they actually present themselves. A lot of stuff I've had to let just siphon through. We look into it, but at least one thing advantage about being a tanky, we know exactly what's going on. It doesn't take too much when we do our research and look into this. It certainly is a huge, huge strike over there. I believe it's growing. I could be correct. I could be incorrect there, but look, if I was to say it, I think it is growing. It certainly is bringing India to a halt. Will it lead to a revolution there? Well, quantitative, qualitative changes. Always keep that into account. No, a general strike doesn't mean we're going to have a revolution either. It could be just for a key demand, but it might be a quantitative change leading into a qualitative one. So it's a very interesting state of affairs. And actually going to some scientific socialism here and talking about philosophy and dialectical and historical materialism, what we're seeing here is matter in motion. It's gone from a lower level form of struggle, maybe a few demands, leading up to a higher level. At the moment, it's obviously some bigger demands about not selling out their farmland to big agricultural business, and obviously foreign investment, which would basically, when you hear the term foreign investment, what it means is multinationals just taking over completely, and obviously removing that population from the land they've been traditionally tied to for God knows how long. So what we're seeing here is obviously that form of struggle into a higher level. I did talk to someone during the week who's been watching this, and they asked me, I wonder if it would turn into revolution. Maybe. We don't know yet. It certainly, as I said, there's some good sources in there and some good organisations organising this whole event. We'll wait and see. I believe the Communist Party, India Marxists, they're the government of Kerala. I think I pronounced Kerala right. That's a province of India or a state of India, and actually that was one of the very few. The provinces of India that actually have got communist governments actually got COVID-19 under control very quickly. Everywhere else in India didn't. So go figure on that one. But what they've done here is what they did, made sure. One thing that's always been clear, they were connected to the masses. They've been connected to the struggle. They were part of the struggle as well. They actually were amongst the people. They weren't isolated little grouplets or little cults trying to shout on the sidelines. These people are actively engaged in the class struggle there. And that is something vital and a big lesson we need to learn. Unfortunately, around the Western countries, including Australia and New Zealand, a lot, and this is not a put down, this is just reality. Communist groupings are just little cults. That's what they are. They're on the sides. There's some good comrades in there, and I'm not going to undermine their work. They are trying to make them functional. But unfortunately, all they are is cults to stroke a few people's egos. They're not actively engaged in the class struggle. As I said, there's some good people in there and some good comrades. They know who they are when they come, and they're going to be watching this video later on. They know who they are, and I do talk to them quite regularly and associate myself quite regularly with them. But the problem is the parties overall, well, they're not parties, they're just on the side, and they divide the issues up. For example, when I say the acknowledgement of country here, for example, when I acknowledge their struggle as part of our struggle, was the struggle against capitalism, part of the class struggle. What unfortunately, a lot of people have done is separated their struggle from, say, the general worker struggle against capitalism. And that is a very, very big mistake. All right, let's go back to scientific socialism. Everything is connected. Be it on a particular issue is not single from each other. Struggle for the first people here to be recognised for their lands, for their struggle against the whole systematic racism that's in our institutions against anything is part of the overwhelming class struggle. Long as ours in the unions here for not just wages and conditions, but improving workers' lives as well is an ongoing part of that struggle. But they're both connected, along with climate change. All right, that's not separate. It's all entwined as well. Climate change is a product of capitalism. of the private profit motive. So why would you want to have that as a separate, complete issue away from the general class issue? The problem we've got, and the climate side of it, majority of it is middle class led, which is not going to lead us anywhere. It needs to be working class led. Working class not only has to be central to the problem, but need to be working class leadership there as well, Phil. So, good example. But there's plenty of other examples. The struggle for health, struggle for better education. It's all part of the class struggle. It's not, they're not separate from each other. But that bourgeoisie, what they like to do is separate it all. So it happens to be a union strike down the road. Oh, well, we'll accept that from the other one. There might be one, for example, where a group of First People might be there to protect some land, or there's some sacred land. They keep that separate from that struggle there, along with, say, some people stopping fracking. Fracking is a very big concern here in this country, up, say, in the northwestern New South Wales, but they keep that separate. It's all intertwined, not separate. And unfortunately, I've come across people who think, well, no, there's no issues. They're somewhere else out there separate. Well, unfortunately, if you're not going to maximise unity, well, your efforts are going to be futile. See, I'm saying theory and practice go together. They're not separate from each other. And it's explained too when I've talked about forms of struggle. And the main three forms, the economic, the political, and the ideological. They're not separate. They're together. And always keep that in mind. Don't let be too much of a strain. The problem we got also with the three forms of struggle, people focus on what's secondary, not what's primary. Yes, what's secondary, it's immediate, it's right there. All of a sudden, everyone goes, whoa, we need to do something about that. The problem is they cannot come up with an actual solution. They come up to oppose something, but what's the alternative? And becoming and trying to find out the root cause of the problem, which is, at the end of the day, the private profit motive. I'll say this again. Marx looked in what was going on inside the factory, and that's where he started, and then branched out from there and saw that was the private means of production to make a profit. That is the systematic cause of our problems. And if we cannot get that across into everyone's heads, or especially in our heads, and we are still going to keep going around in circles, up in the dead end, up into dead end roads all the time, which we've always seen. So just to always keep that in the back of your mind as well, that keep focused on that all the time when you're addressing with issues. Obviously, we have a huge road to travel on. It's a monumental task, but little bits at a time. I was watching one of I think it was Caleb Maupin's videos during the week, or also my friend Dust, and close friend Dust James. And Dust, if you're going to be watching this, a big shout out to you. I was actually mentioned too about there was a question about being active politically and what should they do in their workplace. I think just be very wise about this. I mean, if you, for example, like yourself, Archangel, and a big hello to you as well. I think a vitally important thing is, yes, maybe it's a good idea to have different names on social media. I'm different. Not different, but I'm more of a public figure because I am a union organiser, and people know my politics. My union's okay for me doing these videos. I certainly don't have no problem there as well. But for others, for example, if you are trying to actively organise your workplace, you're very politically active, and even ideologically active as well, all three levels of struggle. Like I said, what's happened, sometimes it is probably wise to have a different name as well. And it's just to cover yourselves. Like I've said in a previous video, just be careful what you put up on Facebook or any type of form of social media. It's not about being shut down, but that can be used against you as well. But if you're using a different pseudonym, different name, for example, John Smith, just use that with a picture of a moon or whatever, or that's perfectly fine. You can do that, but just always be careful about what you put up there in the first place, but also too about protecting your identity uh, for basically purposes, because it might actually affect your employment. And I believe that if employers or prospective employers want to do some research on you, if you're going for a job interview and then seeing you putting some really good revolutionary stuff up on social media, they might think twice before hiring you. So I don't want to ever jeopardise that. And actually, I've made that comment to a lot of members, the union members, but potential members. So I know a few that are active in trying to organise their workplace. They've had to work covertly, and I've said just don't put anything up on Facebook. Work covertly. There's a lot of more. Regardless if the employer is hostile or a very nice person, at the end of the day, if you get found out, you're targeted. We know what happens. You lose your job, or you're pushed out of there one way or the other. So always, I just want to make that absolutely clear. By all means, too, I do encourage people to do their own lives. I think we do need to actually build our community here in Australia. I think in the US, people like Caleb, I like Dust, there's many others out there. If I missed your name, but you're doing an exceptionally good job there building community, especially around the centre of political innovation, which we're actually looking to set up here in Australia as well. We do need a think tank. I've actually talked to some people around the place about that. And so I'm quite interested. I'm not starting a party. This is not a party at all. Far from it. It is a think tank, and way that actually we can share our experiences and help each other as well. But it's good. We do need that here for Australia. But going back into what I'm saying about being active in that, I get why people have to put their names, and maybe it's a good idea. As I said, someone like myself, not a problem. Okay, understand. And people who come across and know me, they know where I stand on many issues as well. And obviously, yeah, they know I'm a tanky as well. I fall into that camp, along with people like Caleb and Dust as well. And obviously, when myself and Dust, we do our our Sunday afternoon, which will be the Saturday evening for those in the week in the US, the Working Class Revolt, which we will be doing again tomorrow, 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, and I believe that will be 8 o'clock US Eastern Time. So we are trying to actually marry it up so that we can try and include other countries there as well. The thing is, Dust does work some long hours himself. He's up in the early hours of the morning. I don't know how he does it. But actually, I hope he's concerns for his own physical well-being. He does a lot. He does work really hard, and yeah, he does some long hours. So by the time it comes Saturday evening, I don't know how he does. He's got more energy than me at times. But certainly, it's something we've got to be aware. Just be keeping that in mind. But that's what we do. We're still sticking to the program, and those of us, I got asked the other day, why do I do these things? Because I live and breathe it. I love it. And I love my union. I'm active there one way or the other. I'm an organiser now. I've always been active ever since I was pretty much an apprentice. I remember my first big rally I went to was in Canberra. It was huge. I remember the meetings at work, the strikes and that, but I've really got active in it. And especially when I was away for the time up in the Northern Territory, and even where I worked. Here's a little story for you. I was actually up in the Northern Territory. We was actually stopping a uranium mine being built in Kakadu National Park. Now, for those of you, Kakadu is a World Heritage National Park. Never been touched anyway. We cut a long story short. We won eventually and stopped the uranium expansion there into that national park. It's something I'm actually proud of. It's some significant cultural site as well, Jabiluka, for the first people there. But it's in some places, it's so pristine, hardly being touched. But no, what they wanted to do, put a underground uranium mine there. But anyway, that didn't eventuate. But while I was there, I had some time out of that campaign. I had to work, find some income, and I suppose this was a job that was stumbled on by chance. The main highway leading out to Kakadu, it's called the Arnhem Highway, and the Adelaide River Bridge collapsed. What happened? The pylons corroded, and what happened? There was two cars, and that's right. I think I'm led to believe it was B triple road train, then 2 cars behind it went over it, and there was something about the approach to the bridge. And what happened, basically, if you want to look, the road train came that far off the ground. It doesn't seem much, but it was like a quick, massive bump, and then the bridge started to sink down like that, and like a curving bridge like that. Fortunately, no one was injured. The cars got out of there pretty quickly too, but you could see how the bridge came down. The pylon was that corroded, or 2 of them were corroded, and just brought that bridge collapse. Keep in mind too, the Adelaide River is one of the most crocodile-infested rivers there in the Northern Territory. Well, I happened to start being a Boilermaker by trade. Well, obviously the company that was contracted to repair the bridge and build a temporary one was awarded, and they were looking for everyone, Boilermakers all over. So fortunately, I've got a good, there was a good few months I was working on that, and then we built a temporary bridge that went over it, and that. So there was good income, but there's a couple. I've actually got some really interesting stories about that job too, especially about crocodiles. But I'll talk about that later. But the most important thing, going back to what I was initially wanting to say, is at that time there was an issue about wearing PPE, clothing, proper overalls or drill shirt and trousers, and the company said, no, you've got to provide your own. I was working night shift at the time, and mind you, I was glad I was working night shift, not because it was the extra shift penalties I was including in my pay, but what was also too, it was build up to wet season, so it was just intensely humid and hot during the day. At night, still humid. At least we didn't have the sun bearing down on us at the time. So there we had when we had our main break during the day or during the night, during midnight. We talked about clothing, obviously. And anyway, instead of hearing about people just complaining about the issue, I said, well, why don't we get active? Let's do something about this. And they're looking at me, well, let's get unionised. Let's get well, so we unionised, and all we got was, no, won't do much. Well, I said, well, the only reason why I can't do much is no one's prepared to have a fight together. Well, obviously someone there took exception to what I said and basically told the company as well. So when that job finished, I was quietly pushed out, I can say. Actually, I was going to leave anyway, but move on. But that's why it's vitally important. But I said, well, there's 2 things. The important thing is, well, it's important to be unionised, otherwise you'll still be in your squalor there. The other thing as well, how to be covert about it, I was a little bit more out there during the time for it, and still am. That I didn't really care anyway, because I had nothing to lose, where others had families and houses to pay off, etc. So there's a lot to lose there. Look, as I said, I live it and breathe it. I've been on many picket lines, not just places I've worked at, but other picket lines as well with my support in many actions, and I'm enjoying it a little bit of it. I mean, I volunteer a lot of my time. I'm on the Bendigo Trades Hall Council. I'm vice president, and I do that because it's a passion of mine. It's nothing that I have to do. It's not an obligation. It's a passion of mine, and I love it, and I love doing what I do, and that's vitally important. So for all those who live and breathe it, it becomes part of our life. But I think for some of you out there, yes, it is wise to make sure you cover up your identity on social media. So if you want to call yourself John Smith or Bob Jones, whatever I don't know. Actually, probably not Bob Jones. There's a right-wing figure called Bob Jones, so retract using that name. You know what I mean, or some fancy name. That's perfectly fine. For some time now, I thought, can you reveal your own identity? But I get why, because if you are trying to do something out there and you're putting your real identity, you can certainly you putting yourself in more or less the line of fire. But it's not to say though, just always keep aware. If the authorities want to come after you, they will. Look, they've got all the means and methods to do so. So if they want to come after me, I expect that half the time. But am I worried? No. Absolutely not at the moment. It's just, look, and I think the most important thing is what I've always said: be careful what you say and what you put up on social media too, for the simple reason. Look, and I agree with Caleb on this about gun violence and carrying guns. Someone asked me a question once about that, because I know they believe there's groups in America. What's happened, and even on the left, have done rallies fully armed up, not just with rifles but machine guns and all that. Someone asked me a question about that a few years ago. Would that be a wise thing to do? And I said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Actually, it'd be a dumb idea. And in fact, it's a dangerous idea to do so here in Australia. If we're seen grabbing a firearm, because the problem is firearms not a Second Amendment, right? Well, obtaining a firearm is not a Second Amendment rule. It's not a right. It's actually, you have to have a license to have one in the first place, and you've got to meet a certain criteria to have a particular rifle, and even a type of graded rifle as well, or pistol. And so there are really a lot of tough requirements at the time. And so I think it would be a complete dumb idea if we suddenly marching down the street there, we have guns, and they won't be machine guns. You could just imagine what's going to happen. Right, we'll have tactical response, we'll have anti-terrorist groups with the police, a whole lot coming down us, and we will not come out of it probably alive. Or if we did, lay down arms, and we'd be sent off to prison. So it would be a completely dumb idea to do that here in this country as well. We ought to try and do things peacefully as much as possible. People that want to advocate struggle, violence and all that, look, just stay the hell away from me, please. Stay away from us. Just don't. And in fact, don't even say anything. Don't take out, and this is the problem too, some have taken Mao's quotes out of context. When he said true political power is through the barrel of a gun, keep that in mind of the historical contents why he said that. Okay, don't blow that out of all proportion. He also said that the party controls the gun, not the gun controls the party. And so just to always be careful about what you put up there. But yeah, someone asked me about that one time for Australia. I said, absolutely not. And no, I don't advocate that at all. It's a completely dumb idea. It's wrong for starters. Yeah, exactly. The public would not like the unnecessary guns. And we wouldn't win public support anyway. No, you're right. And certainly working class support. It would just be, and rightfully so, it's just completely stupid. And thing too, they're not toys. Right, they're actually going to want lethal weapons, and what are we trying to prove when walking down the street now with guns? It's we can terrorise the population. So it's not the way to do that as well. So advocating carrying firearms in the street, no, absolutely not. We don't need it. Don't want it. So, and like I've said too, about putting stuff up on Facebook, even stuff like that, advocating for violence like that, advocating any type of form of violence or something on that ground, always keep in mind, you put that up there, you're being watched as well. And even if you take it down, just once again, I'll also remember this. You could, if you post something up on Facebook and realise what you've done, you've taken it down, deleted it, just remember, social media like Facebook has a copy of it, all right? Remember, it's publication. They will still have a copy of it there. So if someone, say the authorities want to charge you with something, and they can request that, and there you go. It's still there, even if you've taken it down. Even if you're a member of a closed secret group there on social media, it's still the same. So just be a little bit careful what we will put up there, and just don't put dumb things up there like that either. As I said, I've seen some interesting posts. Well, I've seen some interesting posts, but I've seen some real dumb posts. I thought, and I've actually messaged the people, but I think you might want to take that down. We do, but look, I mean, at the end of the day, it's something you just don't. Well, what I'm trying to say, just want to avoid a lot of heartache and grief for yourself. Struggle is tedious. It's long, it's tedious. It's also intense as well, and it's outright hard. Last thing you want to do is bring a lot of unnecessary misfortune into yourself. That's what I'm just putting it out there. So that's where we're at the moment. We're with that. I mean, once again, look, I've actually talked about being careful what you post up there about Facebook etiquette in one of my previous videos. I think it's just got to always keep in mind, just always be clever about that. So I don't think I need to repeat myself there. So that's where we're. That's that part out of the way. The other thing too, it is also wise too. If you are, for example, trying to unionise your workplace as well, yes, talk to your respective union that's involved there to get some guidance off them. But if you go in there going, out there, it could be really out very quickly. And a lot of employers, they won't need to tell you why they're getting rid of you. They'll just say, look, you're no longer required, and that's it. Then you're going to prove it. And you know full well why they would say that to you, but it's actually trying to prove it as well, that they actually discriminated against you or took adverse action against you because of your union activity. Just always keep it in the back of your mind. Well, I'm going to finish up very shortly. It's not going to go complete hour. I believe Caleb Morton's going live later on. I was just waiting for him, and we're going to be looking for him. I don't know what time, but obviously he believes he will be doing a live chat later in the afternoon for himself. I do need to actually jump off here because I've had a few things to do today. Coming up to the Christmas break, it's like as I said, things seem to escalate. I get busier than what I usually would, but it's like, well, I have to do a few things today. And mind you, I've got the working class revolt tomorrow with Dust, and then back into the week. I'll be sure looking forward to taking a break. I'm having all January off. It'd be good to have also too cross the border. I was actually across the border last weekend up to Albury there. And it was good to have a good look around. But yeah, obviously want to catch up with a lot more friends than I haven't seen for such a long time. So, but I'll be looking forward to that. But just at this very moment today, I've got a few things happening. I do have to catch up with someone at 1 o'clock. And another friend of mine coming up from Melbourne wants to catch up with me as well. So I'm going to leave it at that. So look, I thank you for your participation in that, and thank you, Arctic Angel, for your comments too, and for your support. Look, share this far and wide to everyone. I'm trying to make improvements to this. I've actually want to maybe even thinking about doing a course into actually improving my presentations as well. There are certain things I like to do, and it's quite interesting. I enjoy it. I'm very inspired by other people to do these lives. I think it needs to happen. And once again, too, feel free to do your own lives. And if you want to do a online study with me, or even do an interview, just drop me a chat line. I'll try and make an attempt to talk to you, and then I'll, and that as well. Actually, you can find me on Facebook and social media. Just remember as well, my picture of me, I've got a fox's head. You'll see that, and you'll obviously look at a bit of my profile, but even just send me a message that way. Look, thank you once again, everyone, for being involved, and all the best with you. Stay safe. We're in for this for the long run. As I said, I normally wind off with dare to struggle, dare to win, but also want to end this off: workers of all countries unite. Thank you.